You may understand English perfectly on the page, but the moment someone speaks naturally, familiar words suddenly seem to disappear. That is where dictation becomes powerful. It teaches your ears to catch real English, your brain to rebuild what you hear, and your mouth to reproduce it naturally. Today, you will learn 7 powerful dictation methods that can improve both your listening and speaking at the same time. But do not just watch and leave. Subscribe now, like this video, and stay until the final method because it will show you how to turn every sentence you hear into English you can actually speak. And before we begin, comment. I will hear it, catch it, and speak it. Method 1. Stop listening for every word and start hearing English in sound groups. The first mistake many learners make is trying to listen to English word by word. You hear the first word, understand it, then wait for the second word, then the third, and before your brain finishes processing the beginning of the sentence, the speaker is already 5 or 6 words ahead. That is why natural English can feel impossibly fast even when you already know most of the vocabulary. The problem is not always speed. Very often, the problem is how you are listening. Imagine someone says, "What are you going to do after work?" When you read that sentence, every word looks separate and clear. But real speakers do not normally pronounce each word like this. What are you going to do after work? They connect the sounds. Some words become weaker. Some syllables almost disappear. Several words may arrive as one sound group, so when you hear the sentence naturally, your brain may think, I know these words, why can't I hear them? Because your ears are expecting written English while the speaker is giving you spoken English. This is exactly where dictation becomes powerful. Dictation forces you to stop guessing and discover what your ears are actually hearing. Here is how I want you to practice. Choose one short sentence from natural English audio. Not a 5-minute speech, not an entire conversation, one sentence. For example, I didn't think it would take this long. First, listen once without writing anything. Your only question is, what is the general meaning? Maybe you understand that someone expected something to finish faster. Good. Now listen a second time and write only what you genuinely hear. Maybe you write, I didn't, it would, this long. Do not become frustrated. Those blanks are extremely valuable. They are showing you exactly where your ears lose the sentence. Now listen again. This time focus only on the first blank. You may suddenly hear, think. Now your sentence becomes, I didn't think it would, this long. Listen again. Maybe you hear, take. Now you have, I didn't think it would take this long. You have just done something much more powerful than simply listening repeatedly. You have located the exact sound that your brain could not recognize. That is how listening improves. Not by saying, I need to listen to more English, but by discovering, this is the exact part my ears are missing. Now comes the most important step. Compare your dictation with the real transcript. Do not simply correct the spelling and move on. Ask, why did I miss that part? Maybe you knew the word take, but you did not recognize it because it was connected to would. Maybe you heard didn't think as one fast sound. Maybe a small word such as it was so weak that your brain ignored it. This is where your ears begin learning the hidden patterns of spoken English. And once you notice one pattern, you begin hearing it everywhere. For example, you may start noticing that native speakers do not always give every word equal strength. Listen to, I want to go to the store. The important words may carry more stress. Smaller grammar words become lighter. That is why learners sometimes hear want, go, store, and miss everything in between. The solution is not to panic about the missing words. The solution is to train your ears to recognize the whole sound group. Take a phrase like, do you want to? Do not hear 4 separate words. Start hearing it as one familiar sound package. The same with, what do you think? I don't know. Have you ever? I was going to. At the end of the day, when these groups become familiar, English begins feeling slower because your brain no longer needs to decode every word separately. This is a major breakthrough. Think about reading. When you were a beginner reader, perhaps you had to recognize letters and words carefully. Later, you began recognizing whole phrases automatically. Listening develops in a similar way. At first, your ears chase individual sounds. Later, your brain recognizes patterns, and dictation helps create those patterns. Here is another example. Imagine the audio says, have you ever been there before? A learner may hear, have you been before, and lose ever, there, or another small part. Instead of listening to the whole sentence 10 times with no strategy, break it into sound groups. Have you ever, then, been there before? Listen to the first part until it becomes clear, then the second, then reconnect them. Now say the full sentence aloud. This is important because dictation should not end with writing. After your ears finally catch the sound, your mouth needs to reproduce it. Say, "Have you ever been there before?" again, then change it. "Have you ever tried this before? Have you ever spoken to him before? Have you ever visited that place before?" Now one listening sentence has become speaking material. This is how you get double value from dictation. Your ears learn the pattern first, then your mouth learns how to use it. There is another habit I want you to stop immediately. Do not replay the same sentence 20 times at full speed without knowing what you are listening for. Or a mindsign. That becomes passive struggle. Instead, every replay should have a purpose. First, listen. Understand the idea. Second, listen. Catch the main words. Third, listen. Identify missing pieces. Fourth, listen. Focus on the difficult sound. Fifth, listen. Confirm the complete sentence. Then check the transcript. Then listen again while reading. Then close the transcript and listen one final time. Now the sentence will usually sound much clearer than it did at the beginning. That moment is extremely important. The speaker did not slow down. The audio did not change. Your brain changed. You learned what the sounds represented. This is why dictation can make fast English feel easier. You are increasing recognition speed. Now let me give you a simple rule for choosing dictation audio. Do not choose material where you understand only 20 or 30%. That creates too many missing pieces. Choose something where you can understand the general message but still miss some details. You should feel, "I almost understand this." That is the perfect zone. If everything is easy, you learn very little. If everything is impossible, you become frustrated. You need a sentence that challenges your ears but still gives them a chance to win. Another powerful technique is to mark your blanks instead of guessing. Suppose you hear, "I'll probably call you when I get home," but you only catch, "I'll probably when I home." Write exactly that. Do not invent words just because something grammatically seems possible. Then listen again. Your goal is to turn every blank into evidence. Maybe the first missing section is "call you." Maybe the second is "get." Now compare. You may realize that "call you" sounded much more connected than you expected. That discovery becomes permanent listening knowledge. The next time someone says, "I'll call you later," your brain may recognize the phrase immediately because you have already studied that sound closely. This is why one carefully studied sentence can be more valuable than 20 casually heard sentences. Quality matters, attention matters, and dictation creates attention. I also want you to use what I call the 3-color check, even if you do it only mentally. Green means, "I heard this correctly." Yellow means, "I heard something but I was unsure." Red means, "I completely missed this part." Your red areas are not embarrassing, they are your training plan. If you repeatedly miss small grammar words, work on reduced words. If you repeatedly miss endings, listen for final sounds. If you repeatedly confuse similar words, compare their pronunciation. If you understand vocabulary on paper but never hear it in speech, collect examples of that word in natural audio. Now your listening practice becomes intelligent. You are no longer saying, "My listening is bad. That sentence is too vague." Instead, you can say, "I often miss weak words." Or, "I struggle when words connect." Or, "I know the vocabulary but I do not recognize its natural pronunciation." Those are problems you can actually solve. And here is something every learner should remember. You do not need to catch 100% of every conversation in real life. Fluent listening does not mean hearing every tiny sound perfectly. It means recognizing enough sound groups quickly enough to understand the message without constantly falling behind. Dictation helps you build that speed because it slows the learning process down long enough for you to notice what normal conversation hides. So here is your first challenge. Today, choose 5 short English sentences. For every sentence, follow this sequence carefully. Listen once for meaning, listen again and write what you hear, leave honest blanks, replay only to fill the missing parts, compare with the transcript, listen again to the corrected sentence, and finally repeat the complete sentence aloud until the rhythm feels comfortable. Do not chase quantity. 5 sentences studied deeply are enough. If you practice this consistently, your ears will begin changing. A phrase that once sounded like noise will become recognizable. A weak word you never noticed will suddenly become obvious. Connected speech will begin separating into meaningful groups. And eventually you will hear a sentence that once would have confused you and think, wait, that sounded easy. That is the power of the first method. You are not trying to make native speakers speak more slowly. You are making your ears process English more quickly. And once your ears stop chasing isolated words and start recognizing complete sound groups, listening becomes clearer, faster, and far less exhausting. Method 2. Turn every dictation mistake into a listening breakthrough. Here is something that can completely change the way you practice dictation. The sentence you get wrong may teach you more than the sentence you get right. Most learners finish a dictation exercise, compare their answer with the transcript, correct the missing words, and immediately move to the next sentence. They think the goal is to have fewer mistakes, but the real power begins when you stop asking, "How many words did I get wrong?" and start asking, "Why did my ears hear something different?" Imagine the speaker says, "She's been working there for 3 years," but you write, "She working there 3 years." You compare your answer and notice that you missed has been and for. A normal learner corrects those words and moves on. A smart learner stays there. Listen again specifically for "she's been." Do not focus on the entire sentence anymore. Your target is that tiny piece. Play it again and again. Suddenly something happens. You begin hearing a sound that was always there but that your brain was ignoring. That moment is extremely valuable because you have discovered one of your personal listening weaknesses. Maybe you know the grammar perfectly. If I showed you, "She ____ working there for 3 years, you might immediately answer, "has been." So grammar was never the real problem. Your problem was that your ears had not learned to recognize "she's been" when spoken naturally. That distinction matters. Many learners keep studying things they already understand because they misunderstand their listening mistakes. They say, "I need more grammar." Sometimes you do. But sometimes your eyes already know the English while your ears do not. Dictation reveals the difference. Suppose the audio says, "I should have told you earlier." You write, "I should told you earlier." You know the phrase "should have." You have seen it hundreds of times. But when it arrives quickly inside natural speech, your ears miss the weak sound between should and told. That is not simply a grammar mistake anymore. That is a listening clue. So isolate the difficult part, should have told. Listen, repeat. Listen again, repeat again. Then put it back into the complete sentence. I should have told you earlier. Now create your own examples. I should have called you earlier. I should have asked before I left. I should have checked it first. Now look at what happened. One mistake improved your listening, pronunciation, grammar awareness, sentence building, and speaking. That is why mistakes become so valuable when you study them properly. Another common problem happens with small words. Imagine the speaker says, "I've been waiting for you for almost an hour." You write, "I've been waiting you almost an hour." You understood the sentence. You caught the important meaning, but you missed both uses of for. Why? Because your ears naturally pay attention to important content words. Waiting, you, almost, hour. Small grammar words may be weaker. They do not always receive strong stress. This is why learners often say, native speakers swallow words. Sometimes nothing has actually disappeared. The words simply became quieter and less prominent than you expected. Dictation teaches you to notice those quieter pieces. Now imagine the speaker says, "What did you do when you got home?" You may know every single word, but perhaps you write, "What you do when you got home." Again, do not simply add did. Listen specifically to the beginning. Your ears need to become familiar with how the entire question moves as a sound group. Eventually, you should stop needing to hear what plus did plus you plus do as 4 separate pieces. Your brain should begin recognizing what did you do as one familiar question pattern. That is a huge listening improvement, and it will help your speaking too, because once your brain has heard that pattern enough times, your mouth begins producing it more naturally. This is why I want you to create a mistake notebook for dictation. But do not fill it with hundreds of corrected sentences. That becomes another vocabulary notebook you never review. Keep only the mistakes that teach you something. For every useful mistake, write 3 things: what you heard, what the speaker actually said, and why you think you missed it. For example, you heard, "I see him yesterday." The speaker actually said, "I saw him yesterday." Why did you miss it? Maybe the vowel was not what you expected. Another example, you heard "want go," but the speaker said "want to go." Perhaps "to" was very weak. Another example, you heard "next day," but the speaker said "next year." Perhaps you confused similar sounds. Now your mistakes begin forming patterns. After 20 or 30 dictation sessions, you may notice something surprising. Perhaps most of your mistakes are not random. Maybe you repeatedly miss contractions. Maybe you struggle with word endings. Maybe connected words confuse you. Maybe weak grammar words disappear. Maybe you understand American pronunciation better than another accent you are less familiar with. Maybe numbers and dates confuse you. Maybe you constantly hear one word as another because their sounds are similar. This information is gold, because now you know exactly what to practice. Instead of saying, "My listening is terrible," you can say, "I need to become better at hearing weak words inside connected speech." That is a specific problem. Specific problems can be trained. Another powerful technique is what I call the mistake replay. After checking your transcript, do not immediately replay the complete sentence. First, replay only the section you missed. Suppose the sentence is, "I would have gone if I had known about it," but you wrote, "I would go if I knew about it." There are several differences. Do not attack everything at once. First, focus on "would have gone." Listen until you can genuinely hear it. Then focus on "if I had known." Listen until that becomes clear. Then reconnect. "I would have gone if I had known about it." Finally, repeat the complete sentence aloud. This is much more effective than listening to the entire sentence 10 times while hoping your ears somehow improve. You are giving your attention a target, and focused attention is what turns sound into recognition. Now I want you to notice another type of mistake, the word you confidently heard, but that was completely wrong. These mistakes are fascinating. Suppose the speaker says, "I need to pick it up later," but you confidently write, "I need to put it up later." You did not hear nothing. Your brain heard something and made a prediction. This teaches you an important truth about listening. Your brain does not simply receive sounds like a recording device, it constantly predicts what those sounds probably mean. Sometimes those predictions are correct, sometimes they are wrong. Dictation exposes those wrong predictions. When this happens, compare the two sounds carefully. Listen to, "pick it up," then say it yourself, "pick it up." Now create examples. "I'll pick it up tomorrow." "Can you pick it up for me?" "I need to pick up my bag." You are teaching your brain a stronger sound pattern, so the next time it hears that phrase, recognition becomes faster. This is why speaking after correction is so important. If you only look at the transcript, your eyes learn the answer. If you listen again, your ears learn the answer. But when you repeat it aloud, your mouth learns how that sound is physically produced. Those three systems reinforce one another. Eyes confirm, ears recognize, mouth reproduces, and your memory becomes stronger because the sentence is no longer something you merely saw. You experienced it from several directions. Here is another exercise that can dramatically improve your listening. After completing 5 dictation sentences, separate your mistakes into categories. Maybe sentence 1 contained a missing small word. Sentence 2 contained a connected phrase you could not separate. Sentence 3 contained a familiar word pronounced differently from what you expected. Sentence 4 contained a verb ending you missed. Sentence 5 contained a completely unfamiliar phrase. Now you have 5 different lessons. This prevents you from treating every listening problem as the same problem, because they are not the same. An unknown word requires vocabulary learning. A known word you could not hear requires sound recognition. A missed ending requires attention to final sounds. A connected phrase requires chunk practice. A wrong prediction requires careful sound comparison. Different problems need different solutions. That is intelligent dictation. And there is one mistake I especially want you to pay attention to. Words you repeatedly miss even though you know them extremely well. These are some of the most valuable words to study. Maybe you always miss been, would, could, have, to, for, that, did, when they appear inside fast speech. Do not tell yourself, "These words are too easy, I already know them." Your eyes know them. The question is, do your ears know them at conversational speed? That is a different test. A word is not fully available for listening simply because you can recognize it on a page. Your brain needs a sound memory for it, and that sound memory needs to include the different ways the word can behave inside real sentences. This is where dictation becomes one of the best bridges between textbook English and real English. Textbooks show you what the sentence looks like. Dictation teaches you what that same sentence feels like when it moves through real speech. Now let us turn this into a simple routine. After every dictation sentence, do not ask only whether your answer was correct. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I miss? Why did I miss it? Can I hear it clearly now? That final question matters enormously. Do not leave the sentence until the answer is yes. If the transcript says, "I could have done it," but even after seeing the answer you still cannot hear "could have," then you have not finished. Listen again while reading. Focus on the sound. Repeat it, close the transcript. Listen again. Can you hear it now? Good. Then say it. "I could have done it." Change it. "I could have called you. I could have finished earlier. I could have asked for help." Now the mistake has been transformed into usable English. That is the goal. Not simply correcting red marks, transforming weaknesses into patterns your ears and mouth understand. And after several weeks, go back to some of your old dictation recordings. Do not look at your previous answers. Listen again. You may be surprised by what happens. Sentences that once sounded impossibly fast may suddenly sound clear. Words that once disappeared may feel obvious. Phrases you replayed 6 times may now be understood on the first attempt. The recording did not become easier, you became better. That is one of the best ways to see real progress in listening because you are comparing yourself against the exact same audio. So from today, stop being disappointed when your dictation page contains mistakes. Look at those mistakes differently. Every blank says, "Your ears need attention here." Every wrong word says, "Your brain predicted the wrong sound here." Every missing phrase says, "This pattern is not automatic yet." That is not failure. That is your personalized English lesson appearing directly in front of you. And the learner who studies those mistakes carefully will improve much faster than the learner who simply completes more and more exercises without understanding why the difficult parts were difficult. So remember the rule of method 2. Never correct a dictation mistake and immediately forget it. Listen to it, understand why you missed it, hear it correctly, repeat it aloud, and use it in a new sentence. Do that consistently, and your mistakes will stop being proof of what you cannot hear. They will become the exact training material that teaches you how to hear it. Method 3. Turn every sentence you hear into English your mouth can actually use. Here is where dictation becomes much more than a listening exercise. Many learners make one costly mistake. They finally understand the sentence, write it correctly, check the transcript, and then move on. Their ears learned something, but their mouth learned almost nothing. If you want dictation to improve both listening and speaking, every sentence you successfully catch should become a sentence you can actually say. Imagine you hear, "I wasn't expecting it to happen so quickly." At first, perhaps you miss a few words. You replay it, write what you hear, compare it with the transcript, and finally understand the complete sentence. Most learners stop there. You will not. Play the sentence again and listen carefully to how the speaker delivers it. Do not focus only on pronunciation. Notice the movement of the entire sentence, where the voice becomes stronger, where it becomes lighter, which words connect, and where the speaker naturally slows down. Then repeat. "I wasn't expecting it to happen so quickly." Say it again. But this time, do not read every word from the screen. Look away and say it from memory. If you can reproduce the sentence without looking, something important has happened. The English has moved from recognition toward production. But we can take it much further. Change one part. "I wasn't expecting him to arrive so quickly." Again. "I wasn't expecting the meeting to finish so quickly." Again. "I wasn't expecting my English to improve so quickly." Now this sentence is no longer somebody else's English. It is becoming your English. That is the transformation you want from dictation. You hear a useful pattern, catch it accurately, understand how it sounds, reproduce it with your mouth, and then use that same structure to express your own ideas. This is how listening starts feeding speaking. Think about how many English sentences you hear every week. Hundreds, maybe thousands. But how many of those sentences actually become available when you need to speak? For many learners, very few. They consume enormous amounts of English, but most of it remains passive. They recognize, "I've been meaning to," but they never say it. They understand, "It depends on what you mean," but they never use it. They hear, "The thing is," hundreds of times, but when they need to explain something themselves, that phrase does not appear. This is why understanding more English does not automatically mean speaking more English. There is a missing step between the two. Production. Your mouth needs experience with the language your ears are learning. Dictation gives you the perfect material because you have already listened closely to the sentence. You already know what it means. You already know which parts were difficult. Now you can turn that sentence into speaking practice. Let us take another example. Suppose your dictation sentence is, "I've been trying to find a better way to do this." First, listen until every part is clear, then repeat the complete sentence naturally. "I've been trying to find a better way to do this." Now keep the structure and change the meaning. I've been trying to find a better way to learn vocabulary. I've been trying to find a better way to manage my time. I've been trying to find a better way to practice speaking. I've been trying to find a better way to remember new words. Look at what you are doing. You are not memorizing 4 unrelated sentences. You are building one flexible speaking pattern. I've been trying to find a better way to. Once that pattern becomes familiar, your brain can attach many ideas to it. That is much closer to real fluency than memorizing isolated vocabulary. This is why I want you to stop collecting only words from dictation. Start collecting speaking frames. A speaking frame is a useful part of a sentence that you can reuse with many different ideas. For example, one thing I've noticed is, now use it. One thing I've noticed is that my listening is improving. One thing I've noticed is that I speak better when I'm relaxed. One thing I've noticed is that native speakers connect many words. Another frame. The reason I decided to use it. The reason I decided to learn English was. The reason I decided to change my routine was. The reason I decided to practice every morning was. Another. I didn't realize how. I didn't realize how difficult it would be. I didn't realize how quickly people speak. I didn't realize how much I was translating. Now your dictation practice is building a library of language your mouth can actually retrieve. And here is the important part. Say these variations aloud. Do not only write them. Speaking is physical. Your tongue needs experience moving through the sentence. Your breathing needs experience carrying the phrase. Your mouth needs experience connecting the sounds. Your brain needs experience retrieving the pattern while your voice is already moving. You cannot develop all of that by silently looking at a sentence. This is why learners sometimes say, I know this expression, but I never remember it when I speak. You probably recognize it. But recognition is not the same as retrieval. If I show you the phrase, as far as I know, you may immediately understand it. But imagine someone unexpectedly asks you, is your friend still working there? Would your mouth naturally say, as far as I know, yes? That requires retrieval, and retrieval becomes stronger through use. So whenever dictation gives you a useful phrase, do not simply understand it, use it immediately. This is what I call the hear, catch, copy, change method. First, hear the sentence naturally. Second, catch the exact words through dictation. Third, copy the speaker aloud. Fourth, change the sentence to express your own meaning. Those 4 stages turn passive English into active English. Let us practice. You hear, I'm not sure if that's going to work. Catch it through dictation. Then copy. I'm not sure if that's going to work. Now change it. I'm not sure if he's going to come. I'm not sure if I'll have enough time. I'm not sure if this is the right answer. I'm not sure if they understood me. One sentence has just given you several speaking possibilities. Now take. It took me a while to get used to it. Repeat it naturally. Then change it. It took me a while to get used to speaking English. It took me a while to get used to the new schedule. It took me a while to get used to his accent. Now imagine hearing that structure repeatedly and using it repeatedly. Eventually someone asks, was it difficult when you moved there? And without constructing the sentence word by word, you answer, at first yes, it took me a while to get used to it. That is the result you want. The sentence has become available. Now let us make this practice even stronger. After repeating the original sentence, do not immediately look at it again. Close your eyes or look away and try to reproduce it from memory. This is important because reading can create an illusion of speaking ability. When the sentence is sitting in front of you, your mouth can follow it. But real conversation does not give you subtitles. You need the language to come from memory. So test yourself. Listen. I ended up staying home because I was too tired. Repeat with the audio. Then hide the sentence. Can you still say it? I ended up staying home because I was too tired. Good. Now change it. I ended up taking the bus because it started raining. I ended up calling him because I needed some help. I ended up studying at home because the library was closed. Now the phrase I ended up is becoming yours. This is how vocabulary should grow, not as thousands of lonely words, as useful patterns connected to situations. There is another powerful step. Answer a question using the sentence you just dictated. Suppose your dictation sentence is, I haven't had much time lately. Now ask yourself, why haven't you been practicing every day? Answer, I haven't had much time lately. Ask, why haven't you watched that series? Again, I haven't had much time lately. Now extend it. I haven't had much time lately because work has been really busy. You have moved from repetition into communication. That difference is important. Repeating teaches your mouth the pattern. Answering teaches your brain when to use it. You need both. Now imagine your sentence is, I'm getting better at understanding fast English. Ask yourself, how is your listening going? Answer naturally, I'm getting better at understanding fast English. Then extend. I still miss some words, but I'm getting better at understanding fast English. Now the sentence has a conversational purpose. This is where dictation becomes incredibly useful for learners who say, I understand English, but I don't know what to say. You are building ready language from the English you already hear. Another technique I want you to use is 3-speed repetition. After completing the dictation, say the sentence slowly once so your mouth understands the structure. Then say it at a comfortable, natural speed. Finally, listen to the original and try to follow the speaker's rhythm. But do not turn this into a speed competition. The goal is not to speak as fast as possible. The goal is to make the sentence feel connected. For example, what are you going to do about it? At first, say it clearly, then more naturally, then follow the original speaker. Your mouth begins learning something your eyes cannot teach very well, how English flows from one sound into the next. That flow matters. Because learners often know the correct pronunciation of individual words but still sound hesitant because they pronounce every word separately. Dictation gives you natural sentence models. Use them. Do not copy only the words. Copy the music of the sentence. Where does the voice rise? Where does it fall? Which word receives emphasis? Which words become lighter? Where is the natural pause? Suppose the sentence is, I really wanted to go, but I just didn't have enough time. The meaning changes slightly depending on which words receive emphasis. Listen carefully, then reproduce that movement. This makes your speaking more expressive and easier to understand. Now let us talk about pronunciation mistakes. Suppose you successfully dictate a sentence, but when you repeat it, your pronunciation sounds very different from the original. Excellent. You have found another opportunity. Take only the difficult phrase. Maybe, a couple of days ago. Do not repeat the entire sentence 20 times. Work on that phrase. Listen, a couple of days ago. Repeat. Listen again. Repeat. Then place it inside your own sentence. I saw him a couple of days ago. I started this a couple of days ago. We talked about it a couple of days ago. Now the phrase becomes easier physically. And when a phrase becomes easier physically, your brain can retrieve it with less effort. That is one reason repetition matters. You are reducing the physical difficulty of speaking. Think about a musician. A musician may understand exactly which notes should be played, but understanding does not make the fingers move automatically. The fingers need repetition. Speaking is similar. You may understand exactly what a sentence means, but your mouth still needs practice producing the sequence smoothly. That is why I want you to treat every good dictation sentence like a small piece of speaking training. Do not throw it away after you write it correctly. Extract everything you can from it. Listen to it. Write it. Correct it. Understand it. Repeat it. Copy its rhythm. Hide it. Say it from memory. Change it. Answer a question with it. Use it again tomorrow. Now one sentence has done the work of several exercises. And this brings us to another important idea. Choose sentences worth stealing. Not every dictation sentence deserves 10 minutes of speaking practice. En voorham de speed for caberes and for belinding in monder, en voorham de, en mamal de helmden. I didn't mean to. Extremely useful. The main reason is, useful across hundreds of conversations. I was about to. Useful. It turned out to be. Useful. I'm still trying to figure out. Voorham de, voorham den. Create a small list called English I want to use, not English I want to memorize, English I want to use. Every day, take 3 phrases from your dictation and create personal sentences with them. If your phrase is, I'm still trying to figure out, say, I'm still trying to figure out how to organize my schedule. I'm still trying to figure out why my computer is so slow. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to improve my pronunciation. Then later that day, try to use the phrase again without looking. This is how passive language becomes active. There is one final exercise in this method that I strongly recommend. After finishing 5 dictation sentences, close everything. No transcript, no audio, no notebook. Now speak for 1 minute using as many of the new patterns as you can. Suppose today you learned, I've been trying to. I ended up, I didn't realize. Now create a tiny story. I've been trying to improve my listening recently, so yesterday I watched an English interview. I didn't realize how many small words I was missing, so I ended up listening to the same section several times. Look at that! 3 phrases that came from listening have now become part of your own message. That is the bridge between listening and speaking. And that bridge is exactly what many learners are missing. They listen every day. They watch English every day. They understand more every month. But their speaking does not improve at the same speed because too little of the English entering their ears is ever required to leave through their mouth. Change that. From today, give every useful dictation sentence a second life. Do not let it die on the page. Once you can hear it, say it. Once you can say it, change it. Once you can change it, use it to express something real about yourself. Because the true power of dictation is not that you can eventually write exactly what another person said. The true power is that the English you once struggled to hear becomes English you can eventually produce without struggle. That is when your ears and mouth stop developing as 2 separate skills. They begin working as one system. You hear the pattern, you recognize the pattern, you own the pattern, and eventually you speak with it. Method 4. Use short audio chunks so your ears stop feeling overwhelmed. One mistake makes dictation much harder than it needs to be: choosing audio that is too long. If you try to dictate 30 seconds or 1 full minute at once, your brain has to remember too much. You miss words, lose the sentence, and start feeling that your listening is weak. Instead, work with short chunks. Take 1 sentence or even half a sentence. For example, one of the reasons I decided to leave: listen, write what you hear, check it, repeat it aloud, then move to the next chunk, was that I wanted to try something different. Once both parts are clear, connect them. One of the reasons I decided to leave was that I wanted to try something different. This method teaches your ears to catch English in meaningful groups instead of chasing every individual word, and those same groups become useful for speaking. You begin recognizing patterns such as, one of the reasons, I decided to, the problem is, what I mean is, at the same time. These chunks appear again and again in real conversations, so when you practice dictation, do not ask yourself how much audio you can finish. Ask yourself how deeply you can understand one short piece. 5 seconds studied carefully can be more valuable than 5 minutes you barely understand. Your goal is simple: hear the chunk, write the chunk, understand the chunk, then speak the chunk. Once short English groups become familiar to your ears, longer sentences stop sounding like one fast wall of sound. They begin breaking into pieces your brain can recognize. And that is when fast English starts feeling much slower and much easier. Method 5. Dictate from memory, so English stops disappearing the moment you hear it. Have you ever understood an English sentence perfectly, but 2 seconds later you could not remember enough of it to respond? This happens to many learners. Your ears may understand the English, but your brain is not yet holding the language long enough to work with it. And real conversation requires exactly that ability. You hear something, keep the meaning in your mind, understand what the person wants, and then prepare your response while the conversation continues. This is why memory dictation is so powerful. Instead of listening and immediately writing every word, give your brain a small challenge. Listen to a short sentence. I've been thinking about changing my routine lately. Now pause the audio. Do not write immediately. Wait 3 seconds. Hold the sentence in your mind. Try to hear it again internally, then say it aloud. I've been thinking about changing my routine lately. Now write what you remember. Finally, play the original again and compare. Maybe you wrote, I've been thinking about changing my routine. You forgot lately. Excellent. Now you know exactly which part disappeared from your memory. Listen again, but this time try to hold the whole meaning, not 8 separate words. Think of it as, I've been thinking / about changing my routine / lately. 3 meaningful pieces. Listen again. Pause. Wait. Now reproduce it. This trains your brain to hold English in chunks rather than desperately remembering one word after another, and this matters enormously in conversation. Imagine someone tells you, I wanted to call you yesterday, but I got home really late. If your brain loses the beginning while processing the ending, you may understand individual words but still struggle to respond. But if your mind holds the message as 2 ideas, wanted to call you yesterday, and got home really late, you can respond naturally. That's okay, I was busy yesterday anyway. That is real listening. You are not simply recognizing sounds, you are holding meaning long enough to interact with it. Here is a simple exercise I want you to try. Choose 5 short sentences. For the first sentence, listen and pause for 2 seconds before writing. For the second, wait 3 seconds, then 4, then 5. Do not make the sentences extremely long. The purpose is not to test how powerful your memory is. The purpose is to teach your brain not to let English disappear immediately. Once that becomes easier, make the exercise more useful for speaking. Listen. I haven't had much time to practice this week. Pause. Remember it. Say it aloud. Write it. Check it. Now answer it as though someone had said it to you. I understand. This week has been busy for me too. Now dictation is beginning to resemble a real conversation. You hear, you hold, you understand, you reproduce, you respond. That is an incredibly valuable sequence for an English learner. You can also use what I call the one listen challenge. Choose an easy sentence and allow yourself only one listen before trying to reproduce it. For example, I'm probably going to stay home tonight. Pause. Can you say it back? If yes, excellent. Now make it slightly longer. I'm probably going to stay home tonight because I'm really tired. Listen once. Pause. Reconstruct it. Do not worry if you miss something. The missing piece tells you where your listening memory became overloaded. Then listen again and repair it. Over time, increase the length gradually. But remember, accuracy first, length later. There is no benefit in struggling with 20-word sentences if your brain cannot yet comfortably hold 8. Start where you can succeed, then stretch yourself slightly. Another powerful variation is to remember the meaning first and the exact wording second. Suppose you hear, I ended up taking the train because the traffic was terrible. After listening, perhaps you cannot remember every exact word, but you remember, he took the train because traffic was bad. Good, you understood the message. Now listen again and notice how the speaker actually expressed that meaning. I ended up taking the train because the traffic was terrible. Repeat it. Now your brain is connecting meaning with natural English wording. That is far more useful than memorizing sounds without understanding them. And here is where this method becomes especially powerful for speaking. After you reproduce the original sentence, change one detail. Original. I've been thinking about changing my routine lately. Your version. I've been thinking about changing the way I practice English lately. Original. I ended up taking the train because the traffic was terrible. Your version. I ended up staying home because the weather was terrible. Now you are doing more than remembering English. You are learning to hold a sentence pattern and manipulate it while speaking. That is exactly what happens in real conversation. You do not create every sentence from nothing. Your brain uses familiar patterns and fills them with new meaning. So give yourself this 10-minute challenge each day. Choose 5 short sentences. Listen to each one without reading subtitles. Pause the audio, hold the meaning for a few seconds, say the sentence from memory, write what you remember, compare it with the original, listen again to anything you missed, and finally create one new sentence using the same pattern. 5 sentences. That is enough. Do this consistently, and you may notice an important change. English will stop feeling so temporary. You will hear a sentence and it will remain in your mind a little longer. You will remember the beginning while listening to the end. You will hold complete phrases instead of isolated words. And when someone speaks to you, your brain will have more space to understand their message and prepare your response. That is why memory dictation is not simply a memory game. It teaches your brain one of the most important abilities in conversation. Hear the English, hold the English. Understand the meaning, then use it. Method 6. Build active vocabulary through dictation instead of memorizing more words. Many English learners have a strange problem. They know thousands of words, but when they start speaking, they keep using the same basic vocabulary again and again. The problem is not always that you need more words. The problem is that too many of your words are passive. You recognize them when reading, you understand them when listening. But when you need them in conversation, they do not come quickly enough. Dictation can change that because it teaches vocabulary inside real sentences, where words become easier to remember and much easier to use. Imagine you hear this sentence. I eventually realized that I was worrying about something I couldn't control. Maybe you already know the word eventually. You could translate it, you could recognize it in a vocabulary test. But can you naturally use it while speaking? That is the real question. After completing the dictation, do not simply underline eventually and add it to a vocabulary list. Take the useful pattern. I eventually realized that. Now make it personal. I eventually realized that I needed more speaking practice. I eventually realized that I was studying too much grammar. I eventually realized that I could understand more English than I thought. Suddenly, you are not memorizing the word eventually, you are learning how to use it when expressing a real thought. That difference is enormous. Now imagine your dictation gives you, "I'm still trying to figure out what went wrong." A traditional learner might write, "figure out =, understand or discover," and then move on. But you are going to take the whole pattern. "I'm still trying to figure out." Now say, "I'm still trying to figure out how to improve my pronunciation." "I'm still trying to figure out why I freeze during conversations." "I'm still trying to figure out the best way to practice every day." Now figure out is no longer something sitting inside your vocabulary notebook. Your mouth has used it. Your brain has connected it to your own ideas. That is how passive vocabulary begins becoming active vocabulary. And this is why I want you to change one habit. When doing dictation, stop asking, "Which new words can I learn from this sentence?" Start asking, "Which part of this sentence could I actually use in a conversation?" Sometimes the most valuable thing will not even be a new word. It may be a familiar phrase such as, "I didn't realize that. It turns out. I ended up. I'm not used to. The main reason is, as soon as I was about to. It depends on." These phrases are powerful because they help you build complete thoughts. For example, take, "I ended up." You could say, "I ended up staying home. I ended up taking the bus. I ended up talking to him for an hour. I ended up changing my mind." One small phrase opens the door to dozens of sentences. That is much more useful for speaking than memorizing 10 difficult words you may never use. Here is a simple rule. From every dictation session, choose only 3 useful phrases, not 20, 3. Then give each phrase 3 personal sentences. If today's phrase is, "I'm not used to," say, "I'm not used to speaking English for this long. I'm not used to waking up this early. I'm not used to talking in front of many people." Then close your notebook. Later in the day, try to remember the phrase without looking. Even better, use it naturally when speaking to yourself or another person. This is where vocabulary becomes stronger. You heard it, you wrote it, you understood it, you spoke it, you personalized it. Then you retrieved it again later. Every stage strengthens the connection. And there is another important reason this works. When you learn vocabulary through real sentences, you also learn which words naturally belong together. You do not simply learn the word decision, you hear, make a decision. You do not simply learn attention, you hear, pay attention. You do not simply learn mistake, you hear, make a mistake. You do not simply learn progress, you hear, make progress. These natural combinations make your English sound smoother because you stop constructing every phrase word by word. Your brain begins retrieving complete pieces. So create a small notebook called English I Can Actually Use. Only add phrases that pass one test. Can I imagine myself saying this in real life? If the answer is yes, keep it, then use it, because your goal is not to collect the biggest English vocabulary possible. Your goal is to make more of the English you already understand available when your mouth needs it. That is what dictation can do beautifully. It takes vocabulary out of isolated word lists and places it inside real sound, real sentences, real situations, and eventually your own speech. So remember method 6, do not collect words just because you understand them. Collect useful patterns, personalize them, repeat them, and use them. Because the vocabulary that changes your speaking is not the vocabulary sitting inside your notebook. It is the vocabulary that comes out of your mouth when you need it. Method 7, build a daily dictation system until real English becomes easier to hear and speak. Everything you have learned will become much more powerful when you stop treating dictation as something you practice occasionally and turn it into a small daily system. Because one long dictation session will not transform your listening. What changes your English is repeated contact with the sounds that currently confuse you. And the good news is that you do not need an hour every day. You need 20 focused minutes. 20 minutes where your ears are not simply exposed to English, but are actively trying to catch it, reconstruct it, understand it, remember it, and finally reproduce it through your own voice. That difference matters. You may already spend an hour watching English videos every day, but if your attention is mostly on the meaning, many important sounds can continue passing through your ears unnoticed. You understand enough to follow the video, so your brain does not stop and investigate what it missed. Dictation forces you to investigate. Suppose someone says, "I would have called you if I'd known you were there." You understand the general idea. That feels like successful listening. But if I ask you to write exactly what you heard, suddenly you discover something. Maybe you write, "I call you if I know you were there." Now the hidden weakness becomes visible. You understood the message, but several pieces of the actual spoken English disappeared. That is why dictation is so valuable. It shows you the difference between understanding the general message and accurately hearing the language that created that message. So let us build your daily system. Begin by choosing the right audio. This is extremely important. Do not choose English that is so difficult that almost every sentence becomes a mystery. If you understand almost nothing, you will spend most of your time guessing instead of training. But do not choose something so easy that you can write every sentence perfectly after one listen. You need material that sits slightly above your comfortable listening level. You should understand the topic. You should recognize most of the vocabulary. But there should still be moments where you think, "Wait, what did they say there?" Those moments are exactly what you want. They are your training opportunities, and use natural English whenever possible. Interviews, conversations, podcasts, stories, everyday dialogues, educational videos, or clear native and proficient speakers can all work well. The important thing is that you are listening to English that sounds like communication rather than a list of disconnected words. Now choose only a small section. You do not need to dictate the entire video. Take perhaps 20 or 30 seconds of useful speech. Inside those 30 seconds may be 5 or 6 sentences. That is enough. Your goal is not to finish as much audio as possible. Your goal is to extract as much learning as possible from a small amount of English. Now begin with the first sentence. Listen once. Do not touch your pen. Do not pause after every word. Just listen. Ask yourself, what is this person trying to say? This first listen protects meaning. You never want dictation to become a meaningless spelling exercise. English is communication first. Understand the idea, then play the sentence again. Now write what you hear. If you hear, "I've been trying to get in touch with him all week." Perhaps you write, "I've been trying to with him all week." Leave the blank. Do not panic. Do not immediately turn on subtitles. Listen again. Maybe now you hear, "Get in touch." Write it. Play the sentence again. Now check whether everything fits. Once you have made your best attempt, look at the transcript. Compare carefully. Maybe you wrote, "I've been trying to get in touch with him all week." The original says, "I've been trying to get in touch with him all week." There is your lesson. You missed "I've." Do not simply add an apostrophe and continue. Listen again. Can you hear it now? That question is crucial, because seeing the correct answer does not automatically improve listening. Your eyes know the answer now, but do your ears? Play it again. Focus specifically on, "I've been." Listen, repeat, "I've been." Again, "I've been trying." Now reconnect the complete sentence, "I've been trying to get in touch with him all week." This is where the second half of your daily system begins. Once your ears can recognize the sentence, your mouth must learn it. Listen once more, then repeat. Do not imitate only the pronunciation of individual words. Try to reproduce the movement of the sentence. Notice where the speaker places emphasis. Notice which words become lighter. Notice where sounds connect. Notice the natural rhythm. Then look away from the transcript. Can you say the sentence from memory? Try. "I've been trying to get in touch with him all week." If you can, excellent. Now make the sentence yours. "I've been trying to improve my listening all week." "I've been trying to finish this project all week." "I've been trying to find more time to practice." Now one sentence has trained listening, memory, pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, and speaking. This is why a small amount of dictation can be so powerful when you practice it deeply. Now move to sentence 2. Repeat the same cycle, then sentence 3. But here is where I want you to become strategic. Do not spend equal time on every sentence. If one sentence is easy, confirm it and move forward. If another sentence contains 3 things you could not hear, spend more time there. Your difficult sentences deserve your attention. Remember, the purpose is not to complete the exercise. The purpose is to improve your English. There is no prize for finishing 20 sentences if you learned almost nothing from them. 5 deeply studied sentences can change your listening more than 50 sentences you rush through. Now let us divide your 20 minutes. Use approximately the first 5 minutes for pure listening and dictation. Take your short audio and write what you genuinely hear. Do not use subtitles immediately. Give your ears a chance to struggle. That struggle is useful. Then use the next 5 minutes for correction and discovery. Compare your version with the transcript. Do not just count mistakes, study them. Ask, what did I miss? Why did I miss it? Was this word unfamiliar, or did I know it but fail to recognize the sound? Were two words connected? Was a small word reduced? Did I hear the wrong word? Did I miss a grammatical ending? This is where dictation becomes personalized. Your mistakes are telling you what your ears need. Then use the next 5 minutes for speaking. Take the most useful sentences and repeat them aloud. Do not repeat mechanically 10 times while thinking about something else. Listen, repeat, compare, adjust, then repeat again. Try to match the rhythm. After that, hide the transcript and reproduce the sentence from memory. Finally, use the last 5 minutes for transformation. This is the stage many learners never do. Take the useful patterns from today's dictation and create your own English. If the original says, "I didn't realize how difficult it would be," create. "I didn't realize how useful this exercise would be." "I didn't realize how much vocabulary I already knew." "I didn't realize how quickly people connect their words." If the original says, "It took me a while to get used to it," create. "It took me a while to get used to speaking every day." "It took me a while to get used to his accent." "It took me a while to get used to listening without subtitles." Now the language has moved through the entire system: sound, recognition, understanding, memory, mouth, personal expression. That is the complete dictation cycle. And this is why I do not want you to judge your dictation practice only by how many words you wrote correctly. That is only one measurement. Instead, ask yourself, can I hear today what I could not hear at the beginning of the session? That is listening progress. Can I reproduce the sentence without reading it? That is memory and speaking progress. Can I use the pattern to express my own idea? That is active language progress. Those 3 questions tell you much more than a percentage score. Now let us make your routine even stronger with something I call the 24-hour return. After today's dictation, leave the sentences alone. Come back tomorrow. Before looking at your notes, play the same audio again. Listen once. What happens? Can you suddenly hear the phrase that disappeared yesterday? Can you recognize the connected words more quickly? Does the sentence sound slower? If yes, that is evidence that your brain has learned something. Now try to remember 1 or 2 useful patterns from yesterday. Maybe yesterday you learned, "I've been meaning to." Can you still use it today? "I've been meaning to call him." "I've been meaning to start exercising." "I've been meaning to practice this more often." If you can retrieve the pattern 1 day later, it is beginning to move deeper into your active English. This small review makes your practice much more effective. You can also create a weekly challenge. At the end of 7 days, choose one recording you used earlier in the week. Do the dictation again from the beginning without looking at your old answer. Compare the results. Maybe on Monday you needed 6 replays to understand 1 sentence. On Sunday you understand it after 1 or 2. That is progress you can actually see. And this matters because language improvement is often difficult to notice from day to day. You may practice for 2 weeks and think, nothing is changing. But when you return to old audio, the difference becomes obvious. What once sounded fast now sounds normal. What once sounded connected and confusing now separates naturally. What once required subtitles can now be understood directly. The audio did not slow down. Your listening system became faster. Now there is another habit I want you to build into this routine. Keep a small "I couldn't hear this" list. Not a huge notebook, just a short collection of phrases that repeatedly confuse you. Maybe, would have, could have, I've been, do you want to, what did you, a little bit, as soon as. When one of these appears in future audio, pay attention. Soon you may notice something fascinating. A phrase that once disappeared begins jumping out at you. You hear it immediately. That is because your brain has developed a stronger sound pattern for it. This is exactly how listening becomes automatic, not by memorizing an explanation of connected speech, by meeting the same sound patterns repeatedly until your brain recognizes them without effort. Now imagine doing this 20-minute routine for 30 days. That gives you around 600 minutes of focused dictation practice. But more importantly, it could give you more than 100 carefully studied sentences, dozens of useful speaking patterns, hundreds of moments where you identified exactly why your ears failed, and hundreds of repetitions where your mouth copied natural English. That accumulation matters. During the first week, you may still feel slow. You may pause the audio repeatedly. You may miss simple words and wonder how you failed to hear something you already knew. Do not become discouraged. That is exactly what the exercise is revealing. During the second week, you may begin noticing patterns. You realize, I often miss small words, or I struggle when words connect, Or, I know these expressions when I read them, but I don't recognize their natural pronunciation. Excellent. Now you understand your listening. During the third week, certain sound groups begin becoming familiar. You no longer hear random noise. You hear, "I've been trying to," as a unit. You hear, "Do you want to," as a unit. You hear, "I don't think," as a unit. Your brain starts processing larger pieces of English, and when that happens, listening becomes less exhausting. Then something else begins happening. Because you have repeated those same patterns aloud, they start appearing in your speaking. Someone asks, "How is your English going?" And instead of searching for a sentence from zero, you say, "I've been trying to practice more consistently lately." Where did that pattern come from? You heard it, you dictated it, you corrected it, you repeated it, you changed it. And now your brain can use it. That is the beautiful connection between listening and speaking. The English entering your ears is no longer disappearing after you understand it. Some of it is staying, some of it is becoming yours. And that is exactly what you want. But there is one final warning. Do not turn dictation into punishment. If every session becomes 30 minutes of impossible audio, endless replaying, and frustration, you will eventually stop. Keep the challenge manageable. Some days do only 3 sentences, but do them properly. Some days choose easier English and enjoy recognizing almost everything. Other days challenge yourself with faster speech. Consistency matters more than suffering. Your routine should leave you thinking, "That was difficult, but I learned something." Not, "I never want to do that again." And remember, you do not need perfect dictation. Real conversation does not require you to write every word someone says. The purpose of dictation is to sharpen your ears so you can recognize English more quickly and accurately, while giving your mouth useful language to reproduce. So starting today, give yourself 20 minutes. 5 minutes to listen and write. 5 minutes to investigate your mistakes. 5 minutes to repeat and imitate. 5 minutes to create your own sentences. Then stop. Come back tomorrow. Do it again. Sentence by sentence, sound by sound, pattern by pattern, day by day. Eventually, you will notice that the English which once seemed too fast has started becoming clearer. The small words you used to miss will become easier to catch. The connected phrases that once sounded like one confusing sound will become familiar. Your memory will hold English longer. Your mouth will reproduce useful patterns more naturally. And you will begin using phrases that you once only understood when other people said them. That is when dictation becomes much more than writing what you hear. It becomes a complete system for turning spoken English into understood English into remembered English, and remembered English into English you can finally speak. Before you leave, remember this: better listening does not come from hearing more English. It comes from learning to notice more inside the English you already hear. You can watch English videos for hours, listen to podcasts every day, and surround yourself with English from morning until night. But if difficult sounds continue passing through your ears without being noticed, the same problems can remain for years. Dictation changes that. It makes you stop. It makes you listen again. It forces you to discover the exact word that disappeared, the phrase that sounded different from what you expected, the small sound your brain ignored, and the connected speech that once felt impossibly fast. And then something even more powerful happens. You do not leave that English inside the audio. You bring it into your own voice. You hear it, catch it, write it, correct it, remember it, repeat it, change it, and finally use it. That is the real power of dictation. A sentence that confused your ears yesterday can become a sentence your mouth speaks naturally tomorrow. So do not measure your progress by how many hours of English you consume. Measure it by what your ears can recognize today that they could not recognize before. Measure it by the phrases you can now hear without subtitles. Measure it by the sentences you can reproduce from memory. Measure it by the expressions that begin appearing naturally when you speak. Start small. 5 sentences, 20 focused minutes, 1 short piece of real English. Listen deeply enough to discover what your ears are missing, and repeat carefully enough to teach your mouth what your ears have learned. Then come back tomorrow and do it again. Because eventually, you will play a piece of English that once sounded impossibly fast, and something will feel different. You will hear the small words. You will recognize the connected phrases. You will understand the sentence without desperately chasing every sound. And you may wonder, why does this sound slower now? The speaker did not become slower. Your ears became faster. And when the same patterns begin appearing naturally in your own conversations, you will discover the second transformation. Your listening has started feeding your speaking. That is the goal. Not simply to understand English, not simply to write English correctly, but to turn the English entering your ears into English that becomes available to your own voice. So tonight, choose one short piece of audio and begin. Do not wait until you have better listening skills to practice dictation. Use dictation to build better listening skills. And do not wait until your speaking becomes fluent before repeating what you hear. Use what you hear to build the English you want to speak. If this lesson gave you a new way to practice English, subscribe to the channel and like this video so you can continue building your listening and speaking with us. And before you leave, write this sentence in the comments. I will hear it, catch it, and speak it. Then prove it with your next 20 minutes of practice. Because every sentence you learn to hear clearly is one more sentence your mind can understand, and potentially one more sentence your voice can make its own.